Okay, welcome to the wonderful Beis Medrash of Ner Avram in the beautiful neighborhood of Shari Chesed here in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. So, when we get to Terumah, we get to the Beis Hamikdash, right, where there are so many psukim written about the Beis Hamikdash, about what you should get together, what you will get together, right, how they got it together, for the different kelim, the different pieces, the begodim and the kohanim, and all these things. So we always have to remember that this was something that was part of the goal. The Ramban says that in the introduction to Sefer Shmos, it's called Sefer HaGeula, that they really won't reach full Geula until they have the Shekhinah resting among them like it did with each of the Avodas. Right? That's the idea. Geula is not just that we got out of the Mitzrayim city limits. Right? It means really returning to where we're supposed to be. And this is very important, and each detail in the Mishkan is extremely important. The Malbim has a long perush where he explains like the deeper significance of each thing, other Mefarshim as well. So each year I try to look to find something more that helps me connect to it, because we have to admit it is hard to relate to. You know, from stories and even the laws of Mishpatim, now, you know, we have measurements and this amounts of this and that amount of that, and you put this piece and that piece, etc. So let's try to see. I found the Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer says like this. Right, the opening of the Parsha. Rashi says li means lishmi. Okay, it has to be done. The person has to be doing it l'shem Hashem. Right, this is what the whole building is about. The building is about our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then he brings a Gemara from Masechah Shabbos. It says, Gedola Chochma shenemra be'elyonos yoser mima shenemra betachtonos. There were curtains in the Beis Hamikdash of all different types. The upper curtains were made out of goat hair, right? Izim, m'odomim, red. Now, the Gemara says that there was a particular chochma in the making of those that was not there in the lower curtains. Why? Because it says, "V'chol isha chachma slave biyadeha tovu." Right? It says each woman who has the ability, the wisdom of spinning the wool and such, they did that for the inner curtains. Ube'elyonos nemar, the Elyonos says, "V'chol hanoshim asher nosa liban osana b'chochma tovu esa izim." Right? These women whose heart like raised them up in wisdom, they spun these izim, and they bring from Nehemiah shatuf beizim v'tovi mina izim, that this was done on the goats while they were alive somehow. Okay, and this always, when I saw this, you know, it made me wonder why. Right, it's very difficult. And obviously, it was a great chachma to do, but what is the point of doing it? So in previous years, I've given over. I think it was from the Arugas Habosim of Tselem or from Shimon Greenfield. It was one of the Hungarian Gedolim who explained that each aspect of the Mishkan transmitted a koach to Am Yisrael. And the koach, the izim, is the midah of azus, right? A certain midah of boldness, right? Azus, in its negative sense, more what we'd call chutzpah, but there's also holy chutzpah. And the reason that was so necessary, he said, was because after Cheta Egel, people were so down, they'd lost faith in themselves, and you're embarrassed to come and start building a Mishkan to Hashem. Right? It's like they tried to take the gold from the women, and now here they come again, they say, we need gold. What for? We're going to build a Mishkan. Right? You're going to build a Mishkan? But that's what they say, is Vayavo ha'anoshim al ha'noshim, when it talks about bringing all the materials. Some of the Farshim say that means that the women were supporting the men and encouraging them to do this. So Am Yisrael, after you fall, you need azus to believe in yourself, to believe in what you can build and what you can do and go on. That's a parish that helped me out a lot. Here, the Alshich wants to, the Chasam Sofer wants to explain in the following way. He says, nearly, it seems to me, the vada im odom bekadesh atzmo beprishus moisos olam hazeh, that if a person really makes himself kadosh by separating off from excessive luxuries of olam hazeh, umizboided milischaber and anshe doro, and he isolates himself so that he's not in contact with the people of his generation, Ein nachas ruach la'Kadosh Baruch Hu mimenu kol kach. Kadosh Baruch Hu does not have such nachas ruach from him. I remember at one point I learned in the old city many years ago, we didn't have air conditioning, the windows were open, so tourists would sometimes, once I heard one say, "Oh, look at the Jewish monks." Right? Monks. And it's very important to understand that we don't believe in such things. Okay, that we don't have such things. He says, "V'chein motzinu afilu b'tzadikim harishonim u'b'neviim." Right? He says we find even great tzaddikim, great neviim, shekivin shekaru tagar al anshe doram, that because they, so to speak, complained about the people of their generation, like Eliyahu, he said, "Kano ki nesi ki ozvu brisecha." Eliyahu Novi said to Hashem, "I've been zealous for you because they've abandoned your covenant." Heishiv lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response was, "Ves Elisha ben Shaphat timshach leNovi tachtecha." Says, so now, appoint a successor, because somebody has to do the job, and if you feel that way about them, because Ikar Kavanas Chefzu Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Sheyat Tzadik Shel Ador Mu'urav Daito Im B'nei Dora. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, our picture of a Tzadik Ador, is someone who is connected, intermingled with the people of his generation, right? To guide them, to inspire them, to help them with the things. Yadrichem v'yilamdim derech Hashem. He will teach them. Mashayochel etaknum b'derech tov yitaken. What he can help them fix and improve, he will. It almost implies you usually can't fix everything, but you do what you can. Shevach.
Dafka not to be a monk.
Right, exactly. The non-monk. So what does this have to do with the Mishkan? Okay, he gets into something a little tricky here that we're going to have to take as an axiom. Right, the Zohar Kodesh he quotes saying, "Yurios hatachtonos shel Mishkan, the lower curtains of the Mishkan, meramzim al dvarim elyonim al ma'aseh merkava, tcheles argamon v'sheish v'talashani." Meaning, when you were inside the Mishkan, you would look up and you would see these multicolored curtains, right, that covered and created the inner tent, so to speak, of the Mishkan, with all these different substances and colors that were made. He says all of these things refer to the highest things in the roots of the universe, what's called Ma'aseh Merkava. And he says, "V'yadu ala maskilim." There are people who know exactly what corresponds to what and why. The Elyonos, the upper curtains, that was the Ohel Shel Yerios Izim. Okay, so this was the outer covering of the Mishkan. This was made out of these goat curtains that were dyed red. They actually are supposed to hint to us, refer to us, the world of Olam Hazeh. Why? So in Yeshayahu he says there's a pasuk, Se'irim Yirak Dusham, meaning the word Sa'ir is very tricky. Okay, Seir means hair. Seir is the land of Esav. Esav was born in Ish Sa'ir, and it represents Esav. Seirim already refer to like these negative spiritual forces, right, that people would sometimes mistakenly worship, etc. And these powers are there in the world. So he says a person who's standing inside the Mishkan, so he is enveloped with Kedusha, right? And he can attain understandings of Kedusha by going to the Mishkan. We have to realize people didn't live in the Mishkan. The Sefer HaChinuch says that there were reasons the Torah gave us so many mitzvahs that bring a person to the Beis HaMikdash, probably multiple times in their life, because a person was profoundly affected by this. And then they would come back and they would share that experience with people. Everything from seeing the Avodah of the Kohanim to everything that was going on, and even the place itself. The Maharal says, we refer to Hahar Hatov Hazeh V'Halavanon. And Hahar Hatov Hazeh is Yerushalayim and Har HaBayis. The Levanon is the Beis HaMikdash. Why is it called Levanon? Right? He says because Chazal say it's Malbina, it whitens the Averis of Am Yisrael. It purifies them. So he says, what does that have to do with it being on a mountain? And Levanon usually refers to high places. Arzei HaLevanon, the cedar trees of Lebanon, represents something high. He says that simply when you would go to the Beis HaMikdash, that experience would elevate you, and the Averas would basically leave you. Right? It didn't have to be that fight. It was transformative to the extent that it's like it brings you up here, and then suddenly you disassociate from the Averas. If you want to wonder sometime when we ask why we want the Beis Hamikdash again, a lot of times when you're hard pressed to give an answer, that's certainly one of them. But the person standing outside the Mishkan, he would see these goat curtains, right? That he said, Shu isnagus olam hazeh. That refers to having to tough it out in olam hazeh, having to deal with the adversaries, with the difficult situations in olam hazeh, and to do it right. To deal with the needs of human beings, to be involved with other of Hashem's creations. He says, in order to reach this level, it means to do it right, to be able to, on one hand, maintain your connection to Kedusha and to things which are elevated, on the other hand, not to be separated from people, but to be able to be there with people. So he says, this was Hashem's overriding desire in making the Mishkan. He says, by having this combination of the inner curtains that represent all these transcendent things that you experience inside the Mishkan, the outer curtains would guide you to serving Hashem successfully in Olam Hazeh, because we're supposed to connect the two. Just like these curtains were sandwiched, one on top of the other. We are supposed to connect the things of Olam Hazeh to the matters of Olam Haba. Right? I often say Olam Haba is mistranslated as the world to come. Right? That makes it sound like, it's a prize in some kind of game show. Right? Our contestant is won a trip to Olam Haba, right? And it's some kind of, spiritual Hawaii or something like that. Olam Haba is an ongoing present tense. Olam Haba me Olam Hazeh. You create your Olam Haba by your experiences in Olam Hazeh. Okay, so that is by adding the eternal aspect that the Torah gives us, that makes everything we do in this world eternal if we do it the right way. That every action we do in our lives that seems physical, we can bring it to our place. There's a story that I love about Reb Shalom Shvadron, who lived here in the neighborhood in beautiful Shari Chesed, not far from wonderful Nerev. And they say, his biography brought that once he was taking some of his kids to his mother's house. His mother lived in Mea Shearim. He grew up in Mea Shearim. And he met a great Mussar personality, Rabbi Isaac Sher. Rabbi Isaac Sher was the son-in-law of Alter Slobodka, Mashgiach in the Slobodka Yeshiva. He founded the Slobodka Yeshiva here. And Rabbi Isaac saw him, and he said, Reb Shalom, what are you doing? So he said, some of my children are sick, so I'm taking these to stay with my mother. He said, Reb Shalom, what are you doing? So I thought, he didn't hear, so it was an elderly man. Some of my children are sick, I'm taking these to my mother. I said, Reb Shalom, what are you doing? I thought maybe he didn't understand the biology. He says, I have sick children at home, sick, germs. They will be at home, these will be with my mother. Again, he said, Reb Shalom, what are you doing? He raised his hand, he says, I don't understand why you keep asking. He says, listen to what I'm asking you and listen to what you're answering. I'm asking you what you're doing. You're telling me you're taking care of your children. He says, with all due respect, a cat takes care of their kittens, dog takes care of their puppies. Who are these children that you have here? This is the next generation of Torah and mitzvahs in the world. This is the next link in the chain to bringing Am Yisrael and the whole world to its destiny. And now they're in danger and you're protecting them. That's what you're doing. He says, if you realize the significance of what you're doing, it makes it entirely different. The things that you do day by day are like this. It was another sefer, I found something that I felt fit in exactly like that. Rabbi Isaac Sher, they said, a Talmud came over to him, said, Rebbe, I get a mazel tov. He says, what? He says, I became a chassan last night. He said, why? The boy was like, everybody gets married. He said, that's not a good answer. Why are you doing this? right? It's not something of instinct. What does it mean to marry someone, to build a Jewish home? He says you have to know what you're doing in order to give it the spiritual significance that it's supposed to have. Okay, so that really is what this image of the Mishkan, he says, is supposed to teach us. Now, I found something similar in the writings of Rebbe Meir Bloch. This is a collection of different shurim. He gave different things, and he spoke in Europe before he moved to America, the opening of the yeshiva building in Ponevezh, and that means not Ponevezh Bnei Brak, but Ponevezh, right? It's not that well known. The Ponevezh Rav first went on his, again, he was a world famous fundraiser, to the extent they asked the Satmar Rebbe, is there life on Mars? He says, I'm sure not. They said, why not? Because if there were, the Ponevezh Rav would have gone and made a parlor meeting. Right? So he was very good. So he was very far thinking. A lot of Lithuanian Jews had emigrated to South Africa. And he went on a fundraising trip to South Africa. And with that, he built, there's actually a film you can see online of pre-war Ponevezh. And it shows he built a very large yeshiva. He built schools for little children. He built a very big Beis Yaakov that had hundreds of girls. He built a Jewish hospital. He built a nursing home for the elderly. Unfortunately, all of that was wiped out. All of that was lost. He built these things. So here, speaking at this Chanukah Habayis, or of opening the yeshiva, so he says like this: Reishis bar Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with heaven and with earth. So he says the lofty upper things are the ikar of the bria. That's why Chazal describe the heavens being created with the right hand, right? Yemini tofcha shamayim, he brings. Haaretz nivra bismol. The earth was created with the left. Af yodi yos the aretz. Yad, he says, is the small. Okay, that was just in the Daf Yomi, right, with the yad. So right, he points out Gemara Menachos Lamed Vav Amud Beis. Yesterday's Daf Yomi. So he says, so the small is the creation of this world, meaning that obviously the goal is to elevate, right, that which is here. But he says a human being, you have to realize, is made of both, of Elyonim and Tachtonim. We have inside of us Shamayim and Aretz, right? This is part of who we are. And by us working out that relationship inside of ourselves, right, that is how we bring the world to its purpose and then connect the higher part of the world with the more physical part. And he says a person must remain mitzuraf min ha'elyonim u'min ha'tachtonim v'lo vatel chelek mehem. You must maintain that combination, right? As we said, we don't want a monk, right, who suddenly decides I'm erasing all my physicality, or as much as I can, or as much as I pretend to erase, right? And I'm just going to be this spiritual creation. He says, Afilu Moshe Rabbeinu, who was Adon HaNavim, he was, right, the Navi of all Navim, was described as Isha Elokim, which means Michetzi Olamato Ish, Michetzi Olamala Elokim. He was human and on his lower half, so to speak, and godly on the other. And he always remained that way, constantly connected from the Elyonim and the Tachtonim. And he says, this is the idea of Tomim Tia im Hashem Elokecha. You're supposed to be whole with Hashem. So therefore, he says, a person has to use all of these kochos and to be able to join heaven and earth. That's really what's supposed to happen in Eretz Yisrael, what's supposed to happen in the Beis HaMikdash, and what's supposed to happen inside each of us. Okay, so he spoke there at the idea of the building of that yeshiva, that this was also built for that purpose, he said. A yeshiva is built in order to get hat'amah, meaning to put in sync elyonim v'tachtonim, the higher things and the lower things, to elevate those physical things, let's say, that we have in common with the animals, and to elevate, to make them something spiritual. Reach nichach la'Hashem. This is our job as a human being who combines inside of himself shamayim and aretz. We're supposed to elevate the things of aretz to shamayim, right? And he said this you could see in the very working of the hands of the Ponevezh Rav. That was how he built. He said he built an idea of a Mikdash Hashem, because as we saw, that's the idea of the Beis HaMikdash itself, of the Mishkan, to join those two together. That's what helps the person. That's our picture of a whole person. That's our picture of a great person, of a Gadol. So I just wanted to connect to this another piece that he had mentioned. I believe I might have mentioned it once. He wrote a piece. This was already when he was in America, in Cleveland. It was called Hayeshiva V'Ha'olam.
Is Bloch or Sher?
The Reb Bloch. This is Reb Bloch, Rebellion Meir Bloch. He said, on one hand, the yeshiva seems to be a place where a person, to develop fully, should be free of all outside influences, right? Because the outside environment oftentimes is antithetical to what's supposed to be done in yeshiva, and certainly would seem intermingling with people from the outside whose lifestyle is different or in opposition to that of Torah. So you'd think that that would spoil his progress. But he says, Ulam tzarich ladas. He says, what you have to know is the following. Hayeshiva eina makom limud v'ashpa greda. Yeshiva is not just a place where you come to learn and to be influenced and soak up. Yeshiva, by yeshiva tzarich hatalmid lischanech u'lizragel el ha'chaim ba'atido. In the yeshiva, a student is supposed to be trained in how he's going to live life in the future. Im biyosef yeshiva, if when he's in yeshiva, yistager ba'arba amos shel yeshiva. If when he's in yeshiva, he's only in the 4 amos of the yeshiva, lo yargil atzma l'chaya chevra, and he'll have no experience with social, not social life in terms of, how many parties you're invited to, but I mean the idea of social interaction. Right, to be able to be with people. If instead you just want to isolate yourself and meditate, he says, he will not be able to function properly when he leaves yeshiva. Mikol shekain, and even more so, he will not be prepared lashpia al ha'olam. He won't be able to influence the world, which is tu'udat kol ben Yisrael kadeshem shamayim. You want to make a Kiddush Hashem out in the world. You want to teach people. You want to influence people, elevate people. He said, this is what a Ben Yisrael should want to do. So he said, that's only if you are Ma'urav Imabrios. That's only if you're able to intermingle with people. Now again, the Mesilas Yesharim says, right, if the people are really negative and they try to throw that chazal at you, the Olam Tia Ma'urav Imabrios, he says, that's with the presumption that the people are behaving as people. But if people are behaving animalistically, that doesn't apply. So he says, here you have to find a way, he says, to join the two extremes, right? The Ben Yeshiva has to really be devoted to his life in Yeshiva, but Yachadim Zeh, together with this, he has to find times that he will be in connection with different people, and with this he will learn how to maintain his proper position even in other situations. Again, a very interesting picture of this idea of joining Shamayim Va'aretz as our picture. Yes?
So when did he say that?
He said this was Tafshin Yud, which would be 1950.
So how does that compare to now, where all things is up in the air?
This is already a bigger social commentary that I can do in the 2 minutes I have. We could chat about it sometime. From what I understand, I don't understand so much. And one more piece, from another sefer that brings some short thoughts from him. He says that a person in yeshiva, on one hand, wants to develop within himself the desire to be great in Torah and Yira. And great doesn't mean, the kids are, trading your cards with your picture. Great means truly to grow, to become gadol, and to have an environment of devotion to this, with dibuk chaverim, with colleagues, friends who are also devoted to that task. But along with this is, he says, our goal should not be just to limit our work to perfecting ourselves, and then and to ignore and abandon everything that's going on in the world. But but through recognizing the greatness of our Creator, v'tachlis chaya adam, and the purpose of a person's life, tzrichim anu litmaser lif'ol ba'olam. We have to be devoted also to act in the world. Lisbonin tomid masay yagiu ma'aseinu l'ma'aseh Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, that when we say we want to aspire to at least touch the avoda of the avos, that doesn't just mean avoda pratis shel kol yochid, your avoda of self-perfection. That means to be creative, to be innovative, to be giving in terms of Torah and avoda for all of Am Yisrael. He says, if you do it in a way which is organized and thought out and proper, that can really change the world. So he says, these two forms of avoda, on one hand, focus, right, concentration, a certain idea of filtering out that which is negative, and the idea of caring about the world. He said, this is the way that we were trained in our base medrash. He goes back to Reb Leizer Gordon. It was called, right, Reb Leizer tells her. And Maharil, Reb Yehuda Leib Bloch, the Rosh Hashiva afterward, says that the idea is the Tafkid HaKadosh, to hold on to these both things and to unite them, that they shouldn't be fighting against each other, but each one of those tasks and goals will awaken the other. Meaning, when I'm working on myself in yeshiva, it should awaken me, the more I do that, the desire to help Klal Yisrael. And my desire to help Klal Yisrael should be fueling me in my own work on growth, because then I'll be able to help Am Yisrael. And that's the cycle that's supposed to go. So that's supposed to be the world of the Ben Torah. So if you see the Mishkan, which had obviously the Aron HaKodesh in the middle, and its purpose being the uniting, right, the Shamayim and Oretz. And this is, as he said, who and what we're supposed to be. So this is a very big key, and it can help counter the extent of a person either abandoning, right, his own development because he feels, I just want to do, and certainly helps mitigate the sense of it's all about me and I want to get as high as I can and I'm not thinking about everyone else, but we have to unite the two. As we learn about the Mishkan, that's what we should be learning about, the joining of Shamayim v'Aretz.